Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, and in this episode, I'm going to show you how I remove the foredeck, which will give me more access to the front of the boat. I'm going to take out the bow eye and just investigate the underside of the foredeck plywood to make sure it's not delaminated and make a decision on whether I can save that or not. I do know that these two pieces in the aft deck where they were delaminated from the inside in addition to the engine well floor, so I know I have to replace those. Now I have to make a decision whether the rest of the plywood on the boat is salvageable and whether I can match the old to the new plywood that I'll have to make for these sections and the engine well box, and see if I can match that. And I would do that using bleach all the pieces, and then I would try to do a test to make sure it looks good. If not, then I would have to probably go to a brand new deck, which is not horrible. Everything would match really well. But the owner and I are trying to salvage pieces on this boat just because of the originality of it and a unique boat. I will also sand out the bilge from aft to fore bow and get that all cleaned up and get it ready for either stain or just natural sealer, a clear penetrating epoxy sealer, and then a natural varnish, maybe a little amber in it to keep it kind of yellow. And then when that's done, I'll be able to go ahead and put the stringers and the keelsons that I took out in the last episode. I will be able to seal each one of those parts individually, put them back together with bedding compound and new fasteners, and then reinsert that whole piece back in and bed it and have the boat now beginning to come back to life from its skeleton to its former glory. So that's what I'm going to do in this episode, and I'm going to get back to work. This boat was going to get rebedded, the plywood. I had to take it off anyway, so it'll be really easy to use those patterns now and replicate them really quickly with new marine plywood, and it'll match from here to the stern. If you remember right, the engine well floor was shot. The cover was missing for the hatch. Now everything will match when I use brand new mahogany plywood. Sometimes it's just easier to use new. And the delamination is one thing. The edges were really rough just from age, and especially towards the transom where the plywood was the edge, not hidden. in these beautiful rabbited sheer planks. Here you can see the rabbited joint that was cut into this boat by the builder so that the plywood is flush with a beautiful line that goes around the joint. They also did it on the back of the dash and all the way down to the aft end of the boat. You can see how much work that would have taken, cut that rabbit end, but also is just a beautiful piece of joinery that I just don't see in plywood boat construction. I love how he cut the transom and made a barrel out of it and then rounded over the aft deck. Simple in design, but took some extra work. Other than that, it's just really well preserved, and I look forward to making it even better. And today I'm going to get at the project that is forefront in getting this boat put back together. And that is to work on the keelsons, which are, there's one, and then there are 4 stringers that make up the bottom of the boat, and there are 2 floors that make it strong, and then the crossway, and then that's where your floorboard sits, and attached to the bottom, everything's attached to the bottom. So what I have to do is I have to clean out the old dolphinite bedding compound. I'm assuming could be thiocol. I'm not sure. I know it is off-gassing pretty heavily in my shop, and I've given it a week to kind of cook with the doors open and the vents open, just to make sure we have some clean air to work in. What I'll be wearing is, of course, a respirator and earphones as I use 60 or 80 grit, depending on how much I need. It looks like 80 will do the job on my orbital, and I will get those cleaned up. They're all mahogany, 2 of which need at least a foot on the stern end of the 2 outside, ironically enough, stringers, which I think is where the water couldn't get down to the weep hole and then down into the keel. And I'll show you that a little bit. So I'm going to work on that, get those cleaned up, and then I'll know exactly how much lumber I need to order. There'll be a lumber order going into Johnson's Workbench in Charlotte, Michigan. They deliver to northern Michigan pretty cheaply, so I'm going to utilize them not only for the lumber stock that I'll be using on the boat, like some of the rud rails need to be replaced, up to 6 feet, and then of course these keelsons, and then the plywood deck. So I finished the sanding, and I'm going down to 40 grit to get the bite I needed to get some of this fairing compound on. But probably the hardest part was the varnish that was still left. There was a lot of varnish on there. Did a good job. You can tell by the color. This was in the bilge, or I'm sorry, so this is behind the front and the back seat under the deck. The first 2 feet, probably a lot of water. Rest of it looks good. As found in the beginning, this bottom edge had water up on this side, and that didn't get away like it should. There were no, they call them limber holes, that allows the water to go down into the bilge area of the angle of the stern area, and the water got caught up on this top edge because the boat never got tilted or something. But this was all just a little bit, and I was able to take that off and just round it over. And with seam compound, I'll be able to put that back on pretty securely. It is bad. This is the bottom side of the port outside stringer, and about the first 2 feet from aft forward is going to have to be replaced. One of the things that makes me want to do that, there's a knot in this area, and it broke. So when they put that fastener in, that never was really good. It's probably been broke for a long time. So what I'll do is I'll start my scarf, my 1 foot scarf, will go, it'll start here because this is where the damage has to be taken out, literally cut it off. So there'll be my first 2 feet. My scarf will be at least a foot long, so it'll go all the way up to here. And this will be a gradual scarf. It's usually a foot per inch, and this is just over an inch. Yep. So that'll be a nice scarf. So I'll just have to graft scarf in a new piece all the way up to here. So that's what I'll be doing at least for this one. And I think the starboard side, outside stringer is the same, just from what I saw when I took it off the boat. And that'll help me give this stringer some new life. It's not shot. That's what I do not want to throw this away. Try to keep a little bit of the original wood on the boat as much as I can, most of it, and that's just an easy fix. And I mean, this is just an end piece I've probably got in my inventory that I can use. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to put this one to the side and go to the next one. Well, I finished up the sanding on all of the stringers, inner keelson, and parts like this one that were added to on top of the keelson to make it level so that the floorboard sat down. And there's a few things I found. So the keelson had a vertical piece that went here. And of all of the pieces on this boat, this is the only one that was shellacked. So instead of using like a 5200 polysulfate now that we would use, or glue, they used shellac, which is a very sticky finish, is what it was used for back in the day, kind of a black, dark finish. And the shellac dug in enough and stuck that it pulled a little bit of this keelson. This lies on the bottom of the boat, and then this piece sits there. So what I did, I faired this bottom piece, and what I'll do is I'll go in here with epoxy, and we'll fill that with some filler epoxy that's been thickened, and I will get that all back fair. So when I put it back together with the dolphinite bedding compound and fasteners, it will be as good as new. So that was the only bad thing I found with that. I knew that this is the back of the keelson. It's all right. Unfortunately, the things that are the most damaged were these are the stringers on the outside and at the stern right here. These for the water collected not only up on top, which I was able to get out, but this one at the aft end is just as bad. So, like I discovered in the boat, these are the ones that will get scarves at least 2 feet. Each of them will get a 2-foot scarf with a 1-foot scarf. So I'll cut off 2 feet, and then I'll scarf a foot on an angle, a new piece, and then each of those will have a new end. So thankfully, only 2 have to be done, and a little bit of filling, and this floor will be able to go back to work. I can then put it back together with fairing compound. With dolphinite, and this one, well, what I should say, I will use Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer 3 times on every piece, and then I will go ahead and put the dolphinite into the areas where they touch, or the seams, the notches. Well, that's a limber hole. I'll put them where the floors come across, and we'll have a nice set of floors back in and ready to go. Now that I've got the interior parts on the floor at least completed, I thought I would jump over and do the outside keel. The inside of the boat has a keel as well. It's called a keelson, or an inner keel. But this is a flat part that lays on the bottom. This is that more vertical piece that rides along the bottom of the boat, and it protects it against the bottom. Trailers, unfortunately, too. If you have your trailer adjusted right, you shouldn't have it sitting on the keel in different pieces, but in a completely long surface with carpet, and that's what will happen on this this boat's trailer when we redo it. So I'm going to finish this outside keel. This will almost always be made out of white oak for durability. Not only is it very rot resistant, it's very solid, so it's very hard for water to penetrate it. It's very common to see it on the bottom of a boat, especially from this era. You'll also see it sometimes on rub rails that take abuse, or splash rails that get hit at docks and things. It's meant to protect the boat and not rot. This one is in very good shape. At the beginning, or the bow end, where it meets the stem, which is molded into the boat itself, it wraps around. This one fits into it in kind of a hook, and if I don't think the hook is properly, well, there's not enough there, I'll scarf in a new piece of white oak just to make sure. It's a very important part of the boat. It becomes the backbone on the outside of the boat, especially this molded plywood. Very sturdy boat. If you just put it in the water, it would float, and it's very sturdy, and it's floppy, but it's sturdy. This helps start the backbone of the boat when you start putting on big motors and people in the boat and pound on it through the waves. This is a very important part. So I'm going to clean this up. It has a slight concave surface on the inside. That's because the boat has a little bit of a rounded surface at the keel, and that's fine. It fits right in there. I will sand that accordingly with my sander, making sure there's still a little bit of a concave surface in there, not only for it to fit tight against the boat, but for the bedding compound, which will probably be, I'll be using 5200 or 4200. I think I need more than just dolphinite bedding compound here. It has a lot of fastener holes through the hull, and I don't want it to have a possibility of water getting in. And it's in very good shape. The fact that this may never come off the boat is a very good possibility. So using a little more tenacious polysulfide, like 5200 or 4200, which will allow you to get it off, but it will also, I think, give me a little more confidence about the boat being watertight at that very important connection to the boat. So back to work. So what you're looking at is what the builder around 1960 would have purchased from probably U.S. Molded Shapes. This would have been a hull you could buy just like this. You can see it's got a little flop in it, but not a lot. It's got a lot of strength. This reminds me of a fiberglass boat without all the inner structure in it. So same concept. Lots of glue, lots of different veneers. Fiberglass is just resin and fiberglass. Then you put the components on the inside to give it the strength so you can drive it down the lake, motor on the back end. That's how it works. And then, of course, the structure for seats, dashboard, and bow decks. So now what I'll do is I'll give this a good vacuum, and then I will sand it, some of it hand sand. And I'll take that down to this light colored, which will be the first veneer, and then I'll go ahead and put on the Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer to seal the inside. Probably do 3 coats of that over and over and over till it's nice and soaked in. And so I'll do the interior of the boat, and every frame and piece that I put back on will get that same application sanded, sealed with Smiths, rebedded with dolphinite, brand new fasteners, silicon bronze, and just I'll be putting this boat back together just like the builder did way back probably about 1960. You could have bought these as kits too. You get the boat and all the internal stuff, I think dashes and transoms and everything, and then you did decks and things if you wanted to. So it'll be fun to put it back together. Got it all numbered and laid out, so I know how things go back, and yeah, so that'll be the next process. So I will finish up the video there, and if you're enjoying the playlist on this mystery boat repair, please hit the subscribe button. If you're liking it to the point where you want to hit the like button, thank you very much. I always appreciate that. And if you have comments or questions, please put those below, and I will answer all of those. And whether it's a suggestion or a question, I will answer it to the best of my knowledge. And next week we will go ahead, or in 2 weeks, sorry, we will go ahead and do the repairs of this inner hull, and I'll show you how I did that. I will also be repairing the destroyed edge of this boat where the plywood is just left, rotted away or torn away, and I'll put a beautiful edge on this hull so that when we put the varnished and stained transom back in, it'll be a beautiful flush look and really get this boat headed back in the right direction. So I will see you in 2 weeks.